Okay, hi everyone. Howdy McCoskey here on Monday, a few days after the diamond presentation a few days ago. And I really wanted to come and extrapolate a bit more on it. Ooh, big word, extrapolate. To really go into, because I've been thinking about it just constantly since I've made the video, thinking of some of the comments that have been said. I've just really been playing this in my mind. And yesterday I took a complete day off. I did only what was absolutely required to do, and I feel actually, a little more refreshed today. So I thought today is a perfect day to do a conversation. I'm sorry I have to wear these sunglasses because like the sun is just right in my face. And but at least I thought, come here by the lake, sit down, and you've at least got some kind of natural surroundings to look at. So I'm going to talk to you a bit more about this diamond idea in a little more detail, some of the things I've been thinking about it, and that brought up a lot of comments and ideas about the sport of baseball, which is known as to be played on a diamond even though it's a square. And so I wanted to talk a bit about that and how that sport might play into what we're talking about. Okay, so this idea of the diamond, or this idea of two pyramids, one on top of the other, has been really interesting to sort of recognize that there's two directions of movement. There's two directions of, you might say one pyramid is moving into a more material realm, one pyramid is moving into more, well, we'll call it spiritual for no better word that we can think of right now. And that's very close to a lot of other descriptions of it, right? I mean, the Hopi Indians in their prophecy were very clear in describing two roads. They always showed them as linear. They always showed them as moving in kind of a linear direction like this, very close to one another, and then there was going to be a real split point. But that's very similar to this idea of an above and below. Some of the interesting comments. There's been a few. Some of the interesting ideas of it was a real recent comment, of course, saying that, I had when I mentioned it, I put the elite pyramid on the top and the human pyramid on the bottom, and it should be the other way around. And again, it's already this idea that going up is better and going down is bad. So we already first have to already begin to dig into our conditioning of why is going up or going down any one way or another. How do we know, like anything, which is light and which is dark? That's how we've been conditioned. That doesn't necessarily mean it's true. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's something we really have to look into. I remember Mr. Park, when I spent time with him, the Korean monk, 20 years ago now. Well, a long time ago. He used to tell us that there were two serpents within. There was one serpent that was trying to take us to the spirit. There was one serpent that was trying to take us to the material. And these serpents, of course, one is known as the Kundalini force, right? That would be the spirit serpent. But there would be a second serpent in our symbolically in our system, and that perfectly describes again the two pyramids. The other idea that could be taken from a lot of comments was the bell curve. Which I had thought of actually when I first got the diamond idea, how close that also relates to a bell curve. And I didn't mention it in the video, but lots of people did in the comments. And again, this idea of the bell curve, where it's a relatively equal thing, the bell curve, right? But it's the mass of it is all here at the top, and there's very few at the two ends, and that pretty much sums up the twin diamonds on top of one another, moving to those lower points. So the more I thought about how so many teachers, sorry, I'm rambling today because I didn't necessarily make notes on this like I sometimes do. It's all just been stuff in my head, and I just kind of wanted to ramble it out. Because the more I thought of this, the more I began thinking of the entire fourth chapter that I wrote in my book called Jacob's Ladder, taken from Richard Rose's teachings, which on some level I still think is very compatible, very useful information. But I see now it's completely incorrect. The whole chapter is, in a sense, wrong on fundamental basis, in that there is it's not describing that there's an equal direction or an equal set of 3 steps, 3 pyramids going the other way into a much more material realm. And I'm also beginning to think now that you can't just do one pyramid or the other either. You would be you're totally unbalanced if you're only focused on the material realm, the majority of people, and get away from the spiritual. You're unbalanced because you've not experienced at all the possibilities of the other part of the diamond. If you rejected the material completely and put yourself only in the spiritual, I think you're also in some level imbalanced, similar to thinking of this as a spiral or a labyrinth, right? This idea of you have to spiral into the labyrinth that I've talked about many times, but you've got to also spiral out. You can't just spiral in one way and stay at the middle, which would be this capstone of either of the diamonds. You have to spiral out as well, or you're just going to be locked in the center. So this idea that life is pyramidal in form, which I for one took as almost as a guaranteed agreement. I agreed with that without really giving it enough thought years ago, and now I see that's only half of the idea of this realm. So again, you're bringing in so many Hermetic axioms of as above, so below. Somebody had mentioned what the Star of David really is, of how these 2 pyramids interlock with one another. This I can't remember the real geometric name for that. I know it's called the Star of David, but it has a geometric name. Escapes me. It'll wind up in the comments. Somebody, probably about the 4th comment we get, somebody will tell me what that geometric shape is, because I've forgotten it. But there's so many of these elements that are right there, this idea of they're in plain sight, and they've just been twisted, and twisted enough that we miss the twist, that they almost look to make sense, but they don't make sense. So the diamond idea, and again, it doesn't matter whether this is the good part of it is up and the bad part is down, or the good part is down or the bad part is up. That's less important than or using the bell curve. This really begins to explain so much of the work in this realm and why it is so difficult. Why it is so difficult to gain knowledge of the self and knowledge of this reality, because you've got a whole other force trying to pull you to if you're drawn to one end of it, there's an equal force trying to pull you to the other end. It's almost like a set of magnets or a grandfather clock, right? The more the what is that? The chime, not the chimer, the thing that moves on the grandfather clock. The more it moves to one side, there's a natural force that's pulling it back already to the other side, right? The further it goes this way, eventually it gets pulled back to the other side. And so this constant push and pull mechanism is underway. So even those that you might call are the most material or the most nasty or the most whatever, it's also it's got to be challenging for them, because there should be an equal force almost trying to yank them to the other side of the pyramid, to the other diamond, to the other pyramid. And that's part of the challenge, I think, because as you're trying to go this way into a more aware, human, free, spiritual life, of course, this other force is trying to drag you into the dream, into the lie, into the false. And the more you go into the false, bizarrely, there's this pull trying to take you into away from it. The difference is that there's been a whole system set up of how to deny and distract that pull if you're in the material, be it alcohol, drugs, the feeling of just having sex whenever you want to relieve tension, the idea of the idea of television and movies and any distraction possible, so that you don't have to feel this inner pull trying to show you something is more than the material. Now, because I'm not dug in that other side, or I guess maybe I was at some point. I mean, I wasn't always on the side of the diamond I'm on now. I was probably on the other side for a large period of my life. I was very much I liked the world for a long time. I enjoyed this place. Mostly as a teenager. I had tremendous fun here. This world was fun, and I liked people, and I enjoyed conversation. I enjoyed just being with people and the fun and adventure that you could have. So I was on that other side, but I was never fulfilled. I never felt, though, truly happy, you might say, because there was always a spiritual pull on me, even when I was really enjoying life, that whatever I was enjoying was kind of an empty enjoyment. And there's also this sense, I think, if you're really deep on the spiritual side and you've rejected the ability to take that spirituality into the material, you're also going to feel somewhat unfulfilled in a completely different way than you'd feel unfulfilled on the other side. Remember, again, I'm hashing this stuff out right now. I'm still just, maybe at some point in time, 6 months from now, there'll be a book or a chapter in a book or an article, or I'll write something on this that will, I'm just checking my time clock. Well, actually, it was 11:11, by the way, when I checked. How interesting. It was actually at the 11:11 mark when I checked. Good sign. So I'm hashing it out as we go, and I figure, at some point as I continue this process of contemplating, and then there's the idea of ancient Egypt and the pyramids of Egypt. And one of my early friends on the subject, who was also studying ancient Egypt, he had told me, and I kind of kept it in my mind. I tried to prove it when I was there at the sites, and that was, it wasn't just a pyramid had been built on the top of the ground; that there was an equal pyramid built on the bottom. That all the major pyramids in Egypt are diamonds. That what we see of as the pyramids that have a shaft into the ground, say like the second pyramid of Khafre, for example, Khafre, right? The second big pyramid at Giza, which goes down, or even the Menkaure pyramid, it goes down, for example, at Giza, or the ones at Dashur, or I guess the bent pyramid goes up a bit. The red pyramid goes down. But they're downward into the earth, and this idea of just they built the pyramid on the earth but put shafts down under it almost doesn't make sense. Is that I would love to be able to be, of course you can't, but I wanted to do some excavation around the exterior of the pyramid to see, could we start finding blocks tiered going downward. I would be really curious, or maybe some other mechanism was used somehow from the inside underneath that was built to create the appearance. Anyway, they didn't actually dig the earth out and put blocks in and actually build the blocks necessarily going down. They built into the bedrock, into the natural earth. But they somehow built in such a way that that pyramid structure was, or they did something so the pyramid structure was was somehow created in the bedrock going down. So I'd be really curious to be able to look at what's under the ground, because I'm now beginning to see this diamond shape should be everywhere. So that takes me to baseball. Why does it take me to baseball? Well, for the people that don't live in North America, or I guess Japan and the Dominican Republic and Mexico, where baseball is kind of has been the king of sports, you might say. If you're in Europe, pretty much nobody plays baseball. It is a very, very esoteric layout to the sport. It's a very unique setup in its geometry and its mathematics. And I had studied the esoteric occult significance of baseball maybe 10 years ago. Never did anything with it, just had a bunch of notes on it. And of course, you have to remember, baseball is played on what's called a diamond. The field is, the main inner part of the field is known as the baseball diamond, but it's a square. It's actually a perfect 90-foot square, 490-foot sides. That just gets tilted slightly, so when you sit behind it and look at it, it looks more diamond-like than square. But it's not a diamond, right? Because a diamond would be much more externalized as opposed to a square. but it's still called a diamond anyway. And I want to bring up some of this stuff. So for those of you in Europe who don't really follow baseball and don't necessarily haven't grown up with it, maybe until you've heard some of this will unravel perhaps some of the hidden pieces of wisdom that are in that sport and how it might relate to the very discussion we're having now about the diamond structures. That's a duck, or a luna duck. Michael also did a really good at Susquehanna Alchemy. He did one of his first videos was on the sort of occult hidden wisdom of baseball, most of which I had already picked up. The only thing that I'm going to share with you today that I got from him, because I do want to make sure I give credit where it's due, and that was on Al Spalding, as we'll talk about. I didn't know about Al Spalding's specific connections to the Theosophical Society, and Michael's always he's a pretty darn good researcher, actually. As I consider him to be a much better actually researcher than I am. He's quite brilliant in what he can dig up. It's almost like I actually consider him a bit like the magician card in the tarot, the juggler or the magician, that he's kind of able to access all sorts of balls of information. He's got 80 balls in the air all at once, and he's able to figure out how they all fit together and where the connections are. So he has a video. One of his first videos is on baseball. But a lot of what I say will be similar, but you can see that as well if you'd like. So baseball, a couple of quick things to beyond the diamond idea is that what we're dealing with is, there was a book I'd read when I was doing my Mayan research. It was by Peter Tompkins, the guy who wrote Secrets of the Great Pyramid. I don't remember the book he wrote about Mexico. Maybe Secrets of the Mexican Pyramids now. I can't remember the book. But in there, he was talking about the Mayan ball game. And he was the only, or this was the only place I'd seen information on the ball game that was completely different from anything else I'd come across. Generally, it was very simplistic information. There were two teams. They were battle of life and death. There was, one team the team that lost that would die, and they talked about the hoops that were there, and you had to hit the ball, this rubber ball with the side of your body into the hoops to score baskets or whatever points, whatever we call it in the Mayan world, and the way the little stadiums were set up and the acoustics, and we'd have all that. But Peter Tompkins was the first one to describe that actually the ball game was a representation of life, and was actually a representation of the life of the players. That the game itself, the field itself, was laid out in a particular square manner. Not that it was a checkerboard, but it was laid out in squares. And that the starting point of each player would be representative of how you've lived your life. So this is very, very interesting. That each of the players would have had their life scrutinized by, I guess, one of the local shamans, and the local shamans' insight on how you've been living your life would indicate the starting point. So imagine you're watching the Olympics, which I guess are supposed to start again, in a month or two. Imagine if you're starting the 100-yard dash or something like that, but everyone doesn't start at the start line. Certain people start at different places based on how you felt, how you were deemed your life has been lived, how spiritual and human, you might say, you'd been living. So the more negative things you've done, the further back you would be starting the race. So in theory, you could still win, but you'd have a much tougher time than somebody who's living a very positive, powerful life and takes 10 meters off their running speed. So the Mayan ball game had this idea that it was about really the life story and the life lessons of the participants, and the better they had been deemed to live, the better opportunities they had in the game. I wish I bought the book and kept it, because it was one I had just rented from the library and read it and made notes, and I think I took maybe I took a photocopy or two. I'm gonna have to look into this again. But anyway, baseball, it seems, is not. Baseball's thought to be this invention of the United States sometime, just before the Civil War, evolving out of sort of these stick and ball games that had come over from England, and cricket and a whole lot of other things, and then during sort of the early part of the Civil War, it was evolved into this sport. And I don't think that's true at all. I think the sport has been around for a long, long time. I don't think it evolved. I think this whole thing is a gigantic story. But let's first look at a couple of pieces of the game first, and then I'll talk about the story of baseball. First of all, I consider the pitcher to be the challenges of life, and the batter is the representative of all of us. We are, every time a new batter comes to the plate, that is you and me. We are the ones who are now dealing with the challenges of life, and our job is to round all of the bases meaning safe portals, safe places on the journey. Remember, we talked about every time if you're thinking still about this going up phase, but you just don't go up. You go up sometimes and you get a little rest break, and you go up, and so these bases are like a rest break on your journey, with the whole point of coming home. Home being, of course, the place you start from, your natural self, your original self. And if you consider it the diamond, so let's just take it so that you want to finish at the bottom of the diamond. Let's say just to keep it in the baseball reference. So from going from home to first, that would be you're going upward into the material world. That's just regular life. You're learning about the material. You're moving away from your spiritual knowledge as a child. You're being drawn into the material. That's just natural. You hit first base, you get a break, and now it's your chance to rise the corporate ladder, to take yourself up, to be important. I think that's one of the best ones. Rise the corporate ladder, finish in first place, win an award, achieve your goals, do whatever. Then you're going up to the top, which would then be the top of the higher pyramid. Second base would be the top of the highest pyramid. Can't even say the pyramid you don't want, right? The pyramid you don't really want to be at, but we're drawn to it. The way life has been set up and the way all of this has been, the way the world's been presented to us, we're drawn to second base. And so that's, the first base to second base is an intense movement into the material. And of course, it's the farthest away from home. As you go to third base, you're dropping, now you've decided to trying to drop back into the spiritual, and you have to work your way through the material world to get yourself back at a point where you can look at the spiritual again. You've taken away your rise up the corporate ladder. You're moving your way back down into the world of the spirit. And then from third base to home is the final part of that journey of, can you complete the journey of understanding, of knowing yourself, of completion? But again, the journey isn't just from third to home. You've had to go all the way around. You've actually had to go into the material. You've had to experience this realm. You've had to experience the part of that upper pyramid in order to figure this place out. Now, some have claimed that the picture represents Ptah, the Egyptian god Ptah, and there are 9 fielders. 9, of course, being the completed number, but 9 also being the number of creation in the Ptah creation myth, which is more about the creation of reality. There's 3 Egyptian creation myths. There's the creation myth of Osiris and coming from Atum and Ra. Then there's the great Ennead of Thoth, which is a completely different creation myth. And then there's a creation myth of Ptah, which is more about where matter comes from and how matter comes from spirit, and in a sense how matter is a very challenging location. And Ptah is mummified. Ptah is always shown as mummified because he's unable to act freely in the material. He's bound to the laws of the material creation, or the laws he's creating. He himself is creating binds for everyone. The pitcher, right? Nothing happens until the pitcher throws the ball in baseball. So you begin looking through all this, and then you begin looking through a few more pieces of the sport of baseball. Like, baseball is one of the few sports that is not timed. There's not many sports I can think of that are not actually timed by a clock. Baseball is determined by outs, and a game could theoretically take 6 hours to play. It could take 45 minutes, depending how fast those outs happen. And there's 9 innings again. There's that number. 3 outs per inning. You've got the 3 balls, 4 strikes, which are Masonic numbers. In fact, the way the baseball diamond square is laid out, the square and the compass fit perfectly over top of it. So there's a ton of esoteric wisdom. You're welcome. I'm not going to go into all of it here, but there's a ton of it. But I want to also talk a little bit about the creation of it, so you can see that the story of the creation of baseball probably is, it's like the story of the creation of ice hockey. They've tried really hard to make Montreal the center of the sport of hockey. That it was invented there by some rugby players who met on the street and figured out some stuff, and magically, in fact, the first games were played in the Crystal Palace, in the place that was built for the Montreal World's Fair before it burned down. But it's become more and more clear that it's an Indian sport. It comes from, at least it's to the Indian, so we're saying the indigenous peoples, we don't want to call them, we'll call whoever the indigenous peoples were that lived in North America, this being, in this case, the Micmac Indians, because for 40 years, 50 years after the start of hockey, the only sticks that you could get were made by the Micmac. It's like only the Micmac knew how to make hockey sticks. So if this sport was invented by other people or created by other people, be it in Kingston, be it in Montreal, wherever they try to say, they should know how to make the sticks. They shouldn't have to be contacting a group of Indians on the East Coast to make their sticks. So it's pretty clear that the Micmacs were the ones who had invented hockey. Of course, the very same Micmacs, if you go back, way back to one of my earlier videos, the ones who have the language that's exactly, the written language is almost exactly the same as Egyptian hieratic hieroglyphics, and has as their flag the Templar battle flag, right? So why would the same tribe connected to the Templar Knights and ancient Egypt directly be the inventors of the sport of hockey? Obviously, and have this very much suppressed, because it's obviously, on some level, a very ancient sport, something that's very, very old. And they're trying to, again, in this period of the late 1800s, here's all this stuff relating back to history in the late 1800s, right? That's when hockey is invented. It's supposed to be, first game's supposed to be really played in 1875. That's right in the middle of the beginnings of the World Fair, right in the middle of everything that's been changing in the world. And baseball is the same thing. It's happening in the late 18th century, late 19th century, sorry, in the 1800s, with very poor stories. It was long claimed. They had a commission in 1905. I think it was called the Mills Commission, in order to determine who invented baseball, because no one was really sure. And they decided it was Abner Doubleday, a Civil War general who created this sport from things in the games he'd seen in his youth and played in his youth. And there's a whole story about it. You can look it up. Now, what's really interesting, first of all, is Abner Doubleday was the head of the Theosophical Society. This is the society that's linked to, Madame Blavatsky and eventually the Order of the Golden Dawn, an extremely esoteric, secret society. And this guy's one of the heads of it, one of the actual, leaders of the Theosophical Society in the United States. His name, of course, is also extremely straight, Abner. Some has said as something, one said in Hebrew, I think it was the rising of the sun, or the sun's movement. If you take it in Egyptian, Ab is the heart. And of course, double day, you're already right there, 2 days, or twin days, or, so it's almost like you've got a made up name to start with of this person. And when you actually later started to dig into the story, as people did later on, they weren't even sure if this guy had any connection to baseball at all, because when they looked in his diaries, so he seemed to keep quite meticulous diaries of his time in the Civil War and after. There's no mention at all of the sport of baseball. The thing he's supposed to have invented, the thing he's supposed to be the most famous for, doesn't mention anywhere. Like he had nothing. It's like in his own diaries, never happened. So it's obviously a made-up story. One of the people who were involved in agreeing with this story, part of the Mills Commission, which you could, I guess, say is almost like an early JFK commission, was Al Spalding. And this is what I got from Michael. I didn't know about this, but Al Spalding was one of the first great baseball players. He played for the Boston Red Stockings in 1871, along with some of the other early greats when baseball first formed. Great pitcher for 4 or 5 years. Then later became a sporting goods expert when his ball was the one they started to use in games. His gloves were the ones everyone started to use, and so even now, the Spalding Company is still one of the huge baseball conglomerates of the world. But this guy was also very high-ranking in the Theosophical Society. So here we have one of the we have one of the original key members of early baseball. And if you look at some of the big names of early baseball, they're all linked to these esoteric societies, whether they be Freemasons or Theosophists or Rosicrucians or whatever. They're like, it's like there's not too many of the big names when you dig into them that don't have one of these esoteric connections in them. And then he's the very guy who is deciding Abner Doubleday was the founder of baseball, when of course this was happening 50, 60 years after, and anybody who would have been a part of it is probably, of supposed founding, is dead, so nobody can come and give their own private testimony because they don't exist anymore. Later it began to be moved, it's this guy Alexander Cartwright, he was the one who discovered baseball, etc., etc. I think all of it's a giant lie, designed to cover the tracks that it's an ancient game. And Michael also covered this. I was reading these books by Barry Fell. When was I reading them? Back in like 2012, 2013, I guess. These books like Bronze Age Across America or something like that. He had these 4 or 5 books about how he feels that, again, the Ogham language of the Vikings and the Celts of Europe can be found all over North America, and if you can read the language properly, you can decipher all of these what seemingly look like childish petroglyphs all over North America as being the travels of these Northern Europeans to the land. Or whether it's, of course, you could say, I could argue it's the same group of people with the same language living all over the world. They weren't necessarily having to travel anywhere. There was the same people, same language, same cities, same buildings, same everything. But when you go into, I think it's Arizona, there are very specific petroglyphs that describe, or very specific petroglyphs that show, quite obvious, a ball and bat game. No one is going to dispute that you're looking at ball and bat games from thousands of years ago in these petroglyphs. From Barry Fell, he was using his Ogham to find many of the same words that appear in the sport of modern baseball. And so for him, he was saying that this game of baseball was not somehow just manufactured in the mid-1800s, that this was something that was very ancient, was something played by whoever was the indigenous peoples of this area, whoever they were, Indians, Romans, Greeks, whoever you want, Phoenicians, I don't know, whoever you want to describe them as being, Egyptians, and that the specific sport of baseball just moved its way through time and was revived when the new reset happened and nobody could remember, all the new people wouldn't remember anything, and so all the sport, all the equipment, everything's already there. You just say, oh yeah, we just invented it. Brand new sport, we just figured it out yesterday. And oh, great, good for you. You guys are fantastic. All this stuff you keep inventing every day. It's like every day, a brand new invention. But you can look into the book by Barry Fell if you're really interested, and it shows a lot of these petroglyphs. I think Michael has some in his video as well. But I just kind of wanted to take you through baseball. Why? Because again, this idea of the diamond might be showing itself in so many places that we're not actually understanding. Another comment came up someone said in the video of the song Forever Young. At the end of it, there's these people who are realizing something, I guess. They're all, you might say, leaving the earth and they're going through a diamond-shaped portal. And I watched the video. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Wow. So if it's Forever Young is the title of the song, sort of like this, almost like idea of eternal life or something. This Elysian Fields, right? Elysian Fields is, again, this idea of sort of life after death can be linked to the diamond. The Dodgers, Michael and Emily, I talked about this in our last video on the circus. Emily started talking about Dodger Stadium for some reason connected to all of this with the circus. And of course, it's known as a place known as Elysian Park. This linking to the Greek afterlife and the early New York Knickerbockers, one of the first sort of big professional baseball team in North America. Professional baseball team in New York. they played at the Elysian Fields in New York. In New York, that's where they played. So this idea of the Greek and the afterlife and the knowledge is built into the sport. So yeah, I talked a lot about baseball in this video, partially because I wanted to share this stuff. I think it's very interesting, particularly for anyone who's from North America and has followed baseball their whole life. And there's tons. You can dig into this in unbelievable detail if you want. I had to stop it. It's more to try to discuss that this diamond concept, or this hidden idea of the diamond, is all around us and has been all around us for a long, long time. We've been, I have been oblivious to it. I have been caught in this idea of pyramids and ladders and going upward and moving yourself to a higher state. Of course, it's the idea. It's the same idea as the material has been played on the material world, right? Rising the corporate ladder, moving yourself to a higher grade, heading up to university and getting your degree, and then getting another degree, and moving. Again, the idea of degrees in themselves, right? Which is a Masonic idea, and all these things, going up higher, 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 lifting yourself with some sort of piece of paper, some sort of importance, some sort of title that lets you know you're one step ahead of those who are behind you, and look at how you're getting better and rising. My girlfriend is better looking than your girlfriend. My husband makes more money than your husband, or whatever, right? These ideas of always trying to be better than someone else, always trying to be one step ahead, And it's been pushed to the spiritual realm. It's been pushed to the spiritual idea. The same thing, that you have to keep bettering yourself, not just to better, it's not always described necessarily to better yourself for yourself. It's to better yourself so you can be better than others. If I eat more vegetarian food, then I'm better than the person who doesn't eat vegetarian food. If I don't drink and smoke, well, I'm sure more advanced than the person who does drink and smoke. Even though often the person who drinks and smokes, they live till they're 95, and the vegetarian, well-eaten person sometimes dies at 40. So it's not always a lock. I would recommend eating a healthy diet and not drinking and smoking, and for example, is giving yourself a much better chance than not, but that's no guarantee, right? There's also a thing about this material realm is there's no guarantees. There's so many factors, there's so many possibilities. Just like baseball, once the ball is thrown, there's like 1,000 possibilities of what can happen. You swing, you don't swing, you get a ball, you get a strike, you hit the ball, it goes this way, it goes that way, it does this. It's same thing of life. You can't predict. You can't predict every single throw. Every single throw of that ball is going to be a completely new experience, a completely new possibility that you have to improvise and deal with on the fly. And so it's interesting of this idea, I think, that you can't separate above and below. You can't separate, I only want to go up, I don't want to go down. I only want to go down, I don't want to go up. Or I've been thinking too now, the Garth Brooks song, Friends in Low Places. Even though that's not what it meant, the song isn't meant. The song isn't, I don't think, really meant to discuss this. I'm going to listen again to see if there's a diamond anywhere in the song. If the inverted pyramid, if the inverted diamond is correct, and we really are wanting to go down into the roots of the world tree, down into the totality, then I guess you would want friends in low places, wouldn't you? You wouldn't, when someone says they can get out of something, I got friends in high places, they've been able to get me out of this traffic ticket. But that just means these people who know how to manipulate the material world better, as opposed to the shaman who knows how to, I don't want to say manipulate the world, who knows how to move the world at the base level, to move the world at the energetic level in a way that positive things or more helpful things can come out without destroying the natural setup here. That's the difference, right? Those who are controlling reality are trying to push reality for things that they want, even though the material world and this reality gets hurt because of it. They get what they want, as opposed to how someone like the shaman operates, who is looking to have it win-win for the people involved and the entire natural realm at the same time. One is not trying to get more than the other. Okay, I guess that was my rambling today. I'm still working on a lot of this stuff. It's this idea, pushing back my Serpent Rouge video, pushing back my masculine feminine video, pushing back some other research, because this is important. I really think this is important. I'm on to something here. Again, why the idea that almost like, this idea, certainly in the 1950s, right, that a woman's life was complete when her husband gave her a diamond ring. It had to be a diamond ring. And this, again, sorry, there's just so many, they're all just coming in my head, right? These, again, more comments, this idea of the diamond has many facets, the diamond has many faces, the diamond has, a real diamond has, you can have two different faces at the same place of the diamond, but they'll be looking in completely different. One face is looking this way, one face is looking that way, but it's still the same diamond. It's still the same facet. I think there's so much to this metaphor, and I don't want to say I've got it down yet. I don't want to say that how I'm describing it is the way anyone should think about it or the way anyone should believe what I'm saying. This is in the very early brainstorming stages, and I'm brainstorming, instead of brainstorming alone, I'm brainstorming with all of you to see what can we come up with to help us understand, is this a more true metaphor of humans dealing with our reality, and if so, how can we come to understand it, and how can we use it? How can we use the diamond metaphor if it's more accurate to our reality? How can we use that metaphor to really go deep, right? I always say, if you want to go within, you got to go deep. Well, deep isn't up, deep is down. Very, very interesting. It's like so much of this is turning so much on its head, so much of falling for truth. And there it is. It's in the book title, isn't it? It's in my book title, Falling for Truth. I didn't title the book Rising for Truth. I didn't title the book Ascending to Truth. I called it Falling for Truth. And maybe the more correct term we should be thinking is not to this idea of waking up, waking down, or waking down. And of course, there's always a death involved, right? If it's, I can do another video on this at some point, because the term itself, what this idea of awake, which is really just period, wake, period, which is awake is a memorial after a death. If you don't have a death, you don't have a wake. So as long as there's been no death, there's no awakening either. But that's, my book really describes that well. But I will want to do that again at some point. So I guess we're hitting the end of this chat today. Yeah, I've got a talk I'm doing tomorrow with Campbell. You know him from Autodidactic, that really good history channel, but I didn't know he had another channel called Spiral Up, which he's talking about more spiritual type things. And I listened to a few days ago when he contacted me, and he's got some really down-to-earth, useful information on his channel. I highly recommend it if you want to listen to Campbell over there. Spiral Up, really, it's useful. That's what I say. It's grounded and down to earth. It's not out there in the clouds, but it's not ignoring the reality. But it's all about really, finding something useful for yourself. So we're going to have a talk tomorrow, and that'll be up in a few days, I guess. My talk with the Melt podcast is finally up. That's all about spiritual wisdom. The new video was just made on the circus with Michael and Emily. I guess that's going to be up sometime this week. I think they usually get them up about a week after we do them. I'm going to have a conversation with a friend, hopefully in a few weeks here, on the Serpent Rouge, because I know I'll miss a lot of stuff myself. There's There's so much that needs to be, even though the document itself is very small, I don't know, four pages or something, it's a lifetime of study to try to dig through it, and I want some extra assistance from somebody who's knowledgeable on that subject and that document. But that's what's coming up for now. So those are to check. So yeah, Melt Podcast, Spiral Up should be up. I'm still waiting for Rob to get the new website, when I can finally tell you what the website name is. I'm so excited about the actual name of the website. Get the website up and begin to get some videos over on Free Voice for you. Wow, I guess that's about it for today. You can see it's a very still, calm day here. It's going to be nice warm weather. You can see the lake is looking very nice today. I've got some potato hilling to do today, and that's about my job. I have to get done today. So I think I'll stop talking now. So you probably want me to stop talking now. I'm looking forward to your comments on this video. I'm looking forward to ideas of what do you think this is telling you? What do you think it's not telling you? And don't be concerned, like if you think, if I say this, people are going to think I'm goofy, or he's going to think this. For now, keep all possibilities on the table. All possibilities of where this metaphor can take us are on the table. So if you get an insight or an idea or a possibility, just throw it out for all of us to look at, and let all of us judge. Don't judge yourself. Don't judge your own ideas yourself. Let's let all of us, something that may seem great to you, we might all say, well, I don't know, it doesn't seem to fit the metaphor, and something else, this sounded terrible, but I'll put it out anyway. I'll go, wait, but this is brilliant. So it sometimes works that way. So share it with us. Let's see what we can find out. Let's see, this now is a journey I feel I'm not taking alone. Digging into the diamond is something I'm doing with others. And we'll see if we can find ways to do that as we go along. Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting the channel. Thanks for still sticking around. Thanks for dealing with, as I get to really challenging videos, I know I lose a lot of people. I don't get the 20,000 viewers I was getting with my World's Fair videos. I get 3,000 or 4,000 now, but I think this is the stuff that's really important for where we are, and I want to do the things that I need to share and need to talk about now. So those of you who are still sticking around and feeling a part of this journey, I want you to feel that. I want you to feel you're a part of this. So for all of your different support and encouragement and sharing, I really, really appreciate you being here for the ride. As you know, sometimes it's been a bit challenging the last few months sometimes, and a lot of you have been quite helpful in just keeping me focused and not letting things get too far in the spiral, in the bad spiral, so I can get enough energy to sort of turn myself back out of it, so I don't get stuck in the record groove. You're helping me lift the needle on the record for those of us that are over 40 years old that know what I'm talking about. And we'll see you with a new video sometime later in the week. Cheers.